I never dropped the idea of the flying machine that could go straight up in the air and could land gently with no forward speed. And there you have the difference between the helicopter and the aeroplane. The number of its uses will be almost unlimited. All sorts of inaccessible terrain would become available. One could hazard the prophecy that our ways of life would be changed just as they were when the automobile came into general use.
Here are motion pictures of the historic moment in September 1939 when the Sikorsky helicopter was first flown. It looks about as crude as that first Wright brothers airplane at Kitty Hawk in 1903. This scene, 36 years later, marks another Kitty Hawk, the Kitty Hawk of the Sikorsky helicopter.
I said that helicopter will do a number of jobs which no airplane will do, and which in fact nothing else will do except a helicopter. A unique and extremely effective method or instrumentality for saving lives.
No one man can claim the credit for the development of the helicopter.
This was adventurous flying in a machine new to mankind.
Welcome, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the video. It's a little bit emblematic of our 100th to share some of that old footage that we have. We have a Sikorsky Archives, in case you don't know that, up in Connecticut. And we still maintain Igor's office in our plant. If you ever get a chance to come up and visit us, we'd be happy to give you a tour. Some incredible mementos from his early days in business and some of the aviation pioneers that he hung out with as he designed some of the world's revolutionary helicopters. So we're really pleased to be back at HAI this year, and thanks for joining us here. I do plan to give you a little bit of a once around the business. I won't cover the commercial piece because we have Leon Silva here, our Vice President for Global Commercial and Military Systems, and Leon will dive in deep on our commercial products, but I'll cover the rest of the business. So as I mentioned, we are celebrating our 100th anniversary. This past Sunday, March 5th, was our 100th, and I actually am fresh off of a plane from Avalon Air Show down in Australia, where we celebrated with our newest customers in Australia last week. So really pleased to be celebrating with all of you. We're going to have some special announcements during the show. We're going to have some celebrations. We have Sergei Sikorsky here tomorrow, so please join us to hear from him and some of the insights that he can always share about his father and about the business for all the time that he spent in the business. You know, we've been innovating for 100 years, and that continues today. And you saw some of the products there and that innovation, but we also want to talk today a little bit about the next 100 years and some of the innovations that we see going forward. And we're going to actually have an announcement today at 12:30 about some of that innovation, so hopefully you can join us in our booth to see that. As we get started, if we could go to the next chart, again, I'm going to share some of the highlights from the last year around our business. As you can see from the slide, we saved over 3,000 lives with our platform. And again, this fits Igor's mantra of we want to build helicopters to save lives, to bring people home everywhere, every time. And that's why we track this, because we really want to know how the helicopter is living up to his vision as a life-saving device. We also delivered 95 helicopters last year of all different types, commercial and military, across our portfolio. And I think the thing that makes me most proud is that we had 3 of our platforms that were in development together that all went through successful IOT&E, so that's initial operational test and evaluation, and achieved IOC, initial operational capability, with their respective services. So first up was the presidential helicopter. That was actually late 21 and into early 22, where that was IOT&E'd and then declared IOC by the Marine Corps. That is flying today in the mission, not the entire mission. They're working its way in, but it is flying, and we're about halfway through production of those helicopters. Next up was the CH-53K, very successful IOT&E. During IOT&E, you may have seen some pictures where the CH-53K lifted a Blackhawk that had been downed in the high altitude mountains of California at about 12,000 feet. And the service that owned the helicopter did not want to cut it apart to get it out. So they asked the Marine Corps if they could bring in a K to lift it out fully. No parts removed other than the blades, of course. And the K did it at 12,000 feet, lifted the Blackhawk. Recently, you may have seen that the K lifted an F-35. So we have photos of it down at NavAir, Pax River, lifting an F-35, one of the early test aircraft. So the K is proving its mettle already. It is, again, IOC'd, and it will be going on deployment next year in 2024. And then, of course, the Combat Rescue Helicopter. That went through its IOT&E about mid-year in 2022, and it was declared IOC early fall, and it actually conducted its first mission. You may have seen some articles written about the first mission of the Combat Rescue Helicopter. So, listen, I'm not sure how many helicopter companies could put 2 or 3 major programs through development simultaneously, IOT&E, and get them IOC. That's a pretty amazing accomplishment if you understand how complex these machines are and the development that we go through. So very proud of that fact, and a lot of accomplishments last year there. One of the things that we were disappointed in last year, of course, was the decision on the FLRAA program, the Future Long Range Assault Aircraft program. So I would like to talk a little bit about X2 and where we stand with that. So if we go to the next chart, obviously we continue to push forward with X2. We believe that this absolutely delivers some revolutionary capability in speed, range, maneuverability, survivability. We think it's a great fit for the Future Attack Reconnaissance Aircraft program, and we remain, deeply involved, obviously, in that competition. We continue to fly the S97 Raider. The S97 Raider has been around for quite some time, so it's a testament to an experimental aircraft that we're still able to fly this aircraft. And it serves really as a test bed for all of our X2 activities, but particularly for the FARA program, because it's about an 80% of the scale of the FARA aircraft, of our Raider X aircraft. So every time we fly this, whether it be for a customer demonstration or an engineering test, of which we're still doing many, every time we fly it, it continues to build our confidence in the digital model that we have for Raider X. And it informs our design for Raider X. We're learning something every time we fly, and we continue to update that model. So S97 continues to prove its value. Raider X, which again is our FARA competitive prototype offering, is 95% complete. You can see in the upper right-hand chart, part of the chart there's a photo, and that's actually old because the aircraft is painted now. It looks pretty cool. We didn't share a photo of that, but it's 95% complete. We are waiting for the ITEP engine, and once we get that, we will install it and begin ground testing and then flight testing, hopefully later this year, assuming the engine comes in when we expect. And you can see a full representation of our Raider X offering down in the lower left. And then I'll also mention the International Twin that you see on the bottom right of the chart. That is an offering. It's a larger scale than the Raider X offering, and it's dual engine, and it's primarily right now for the international utility market. We are working collaboratively with Leonardo on a study for the Italian government to see how X2 fits into their next generation fast helicopter program and meets the requirements that they have. We're also closely watching the next generation rotorcraft capability that's being developed by NATO. There's a lot of studies going on. We're participating in those studies. We certainly think that X2 fits very well with a number of the requirements that they have, and we'll continue to work that as time moves on. So a lot going on around X2, even though we did not have a positive decision on the FLRAA program. Now, my talk today wouldn't be complete if I didn't talk about the Blackhawk. So if we go to the next chart, we just celebrated in January the delivery of the 5,000th Hawk variant. I'm not sure there's other programs like this that have delivered 5,000 of anything, quite frankly, particularly when it comes to aviation and civil aerospace. You can see the many variants that this comes in. We know about the Blackhawk, the Combat Rescue Helicopter, the Firehawk. It's used as a VIP head of state aircraft. and many other configurations around the world. All you have to do is walk the show floor, and I think by my count this morning, the most prevalent helicopter out there is a Hawk. They're not all Sikorsky, badged Hawks, but they belong to other companies, and they're doing various missions and still flying. Many of them old A models, but they look great. So this aircraft continues to thrive in the market. Again, we delivered our 5,000th, and we had a great year last year and early this year. As I said, I was just in Australia, where we recently were awarded a contract for 40 Blackhawks worth nearly $2 billion. And they also signed on for 13 additional MH-60 Romeo Seahawks. So that'll bring their fleet up to 36 aircraft. So Australia is in the process of tripling their Hawk population from currently 23 aircraft up to eventually 76. We're very proud of that. We continue to deliver S-70 Hawk aircraft out of our facility in Mielec, Poland. They're in the process of working deliveries to Romania, to Philippines, and to Poland. And there's many, many more on tap. As for the U.S. Army, we signed our 10th multi-year contract last year. That's for a minimum of 120 aircraft and up to 255 aircraft, which would include foreign military sales. And I can tell you with the Australia deal, we're well on our way to filling up that 255 aircraft quantity. That'll take us through 2027 for production. And you may have seen that earlier this year, the Army put out a sources sought where they're already looking at production from 2028 through 2033. So we responded to that. We're in discussions with the Army about what that might look like. At a minimum, it'll be a vehicle to continue to sell the aircraft internationally through foreign military sales. But I think the Army is also looking at what, if any, requirements they may have. They are committed to flying this platform through the 2060s. This is going to be out there for a long time. It'll be flying alongside of the FLRAA aircraft. It will do missions that likely the FLRAA aircraft won't do. And so the platform will very much have to be modernized. We're in early discussions with the Army about what that looks like. We know that the Army is currently planning to put ITEP engines on the platform to give it additional lift and power. We're also looking at putting a modular open system architecture backbone on the aircraft and cockpit to take it into 21st century warfare capabilities and have it be able to interoperate with future vertical lift aircraft. We also are looking at putting a digital vehicle management system. Think of that as some fly-by-wire capability so that we can implement our matrix capability. You've seen that fly on a Blackhawk, and we know that the Army has interest in the contested logistics mission of potentially using some of those capabilities for an unmanned Blackhawk. So a lot to come for the Blackhawk fleet from a modernization perspective, continued production both domestically and internationally, and we're certainly proud of that fact. I should have mentioned also, I talked about a couple of the military orders that we've had for the aircraft, but last year CAL FIRE also put an order in with United Rotorcraft, our partner, for 4 Firehawks, and so we're delivering 3 against that order. They already had one from a prior order. We continue to see pretty good demand for Firehawks, and I'm sure Leon will mention a little bit about that as well. So let me just finish out just a little bit on the new technology. Last year you saw and I talked about our Blackhawk flying unmanned down at Fort Campbell. Well, over this past year we continued to work with the Army on that, and we had the unmanned Blackhawk at PC-22, Project Convergence 22, which is a very large Army exercise that was out at Yuma Proving Grounds. And the Blackhawk just didn't simply do a flight, unmanned. It actually did a logistics mission. So it had a sling load underneath. It carried patients and medical supplies inside. No one was flying the aircraft. No human was on board the aircraft. And I'll show you a video here, and I'll just mention that the person that you see on the ground in the video isn't controlling the aircraft. All that person is doing is giving it a location to go to. The aircraft figures out how it should go, how fast it should fly, given the load that it has slung underneath of it, and any other parameter that the aircraft needs to calculate to conduct that mission. And if something were to get in its way along the way, it would reroute itself and figure all that out. So again, the controller on the ground is really simply telling it where it wants it to go, and the aircraft figures out the rest. Pretty amazing capability. So let's watch the video. Pretty amazing capability there. And, you know, the funny thing for me is to hear our engineers talk with the Army pilots, because, you know, it's not hard to understand that the computer can do a better job of flying in a lot of situations than a human. Pilots are awesome. Pilots are always going to be needed, I think, for certain things. But, you know, just a little example, when you fly the sling load, you know, there are certain reactions that the aircraft has to the sling load. The computer can adapt to that much better than the pilot can. So just an example. We talked also, I think, last year about how this capability is not unique to the Blackhawk. It wasn't designed for the Blackhawk. It was designed as an autonomy kit that can be put on a fixed wing or any rotary wing platform. And we've been working with some fixed wing partners in the cargo space to go down to single pilot operations. And so a lot of applicability for this autonomy capability. And I hope, as I started out the brief today, I hope you'll join us today at 12:30. We're going to have, I think, an exciting announcement about not only the future of autonomy, but also eVTOL. So please come join us at 12:30 in our booth, and we'll talk to you then. So I'm going to turn it over to Leon, who'll give us a rundown on the commercial space.
Thank you, Paul, and good morning, everybody. Some exciting stuff from my point of view, seeing some of these technologies that are being developed and imagining how they will extend at some point into the commercial world is very, very exciting. I have to explain some of that last stuff on the video to some of my pilot friends, and I just keep promising them that we'll find them other things to do that will be interesting. My name is Leon Silva, and I lead the global commercial military systems for Sikorsky. This is a relatively new job for me. I was promoted into this last year, but I've worked at Sikorsky for over 30 years. I've worked on just about every platform at Sikorsky. It's an exciting time. I've spent the last 5 years working on the commercial side, and particularly the business aspects of it are super interesting. And I'm happy and proud of being able to lead the team through that. So for GCMS, we focus on the S92, on the S76, some legacy systems that are still out there, and of course the aftermarket support that goes with those platforms, including the Power by the Hour programs that we call TAP, Total Assurance Plans. The commercial market has been particularly dynamic, and we're seeing some transitions coming through here in the recent past. So we've been spending a lot of time with our customers for a number of reasons, and I wanted to share some of the things that we're focused on here in the near term. So one of the things that is interesting is that the S92 fleet, although it hasn't been growing in numbers significantly recently in the last 3 to 5 years, it is experiencing some of the highest level of usage. The S92 fleet is flying on the order of 13,000 hours a month. And those aircraft are getting pushed at this point and performing very, very well for our customers, supporting their businesses. I'll say a little bit more about that later in my comments here. But overall, we see the industry continuing to trend in a very positive direction. The availability rates for both the 92 and the 76 remain very high. We've had some challenges that I'll talk about here also with respect to the supply chain and related aspects of that. But it's interesting to me when we compare, even despite our challenges, when we compare ourselves to some of the other platforms out there, we're still very, very high with respect to availability rates. We're seeing signals for increased demand for the S92, offshore oil for sure. Search and rescue is a category that continues to play very well, and the S92 also has an established market out there for heads of state and VIP. So we continue to see a flow of that. Recently, in our preparations for what may be the next stages, we actually engaged a third-party consultancy and got an independent measure of our assumptions with respect to the opportunities within the marketplace. And I'm glad to report that they were able to validate our expectations. So we see a future on the S92 for new aircraft, and I'll tell you about that a little bit more in a moment. Since everyone's reflecting on 100 years, and I can only hope myself and all of us get a chance to reflect personally on 100 years, that's an amazing establishment. I wanted to talk a little bit about the history of the S92. So you'll see the pictures of the S61 and the Blackhawk there. So back in the early 90s, Sikorsky had the S61 in the marketplace for quite a long time. It didn't have a replacement aircraft for that. And it essentially took the attributes of the S61 and this Blackhawk and created what is now the S92. It's interesting because Paul mentioned we've delivered 5,000 of the Blackhawk. And actually, even the S61 delivered several thousands of aircraft over the years. So that configuration has proven to be very successful. In 2002, Sikorsky was awarded the Collier Award for design, manufacturing, and the introduction of the S92. That award, by the way, is on display here as part of our 100-year celebration. So we have two of them. We're very proud of that. The Collier Award is given out for each year for achievement in aviation. And so you'll see one for the S92. You'll see one in our booth also for the X2 technology. It's something that we're very proud of. When it's not here at HAI, it sits outside of our executive offices, and we walk by it literally on a daily basis to remind ourselves of the importance and value of that achievement. We've delivered over 300 S92s at this point. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is that the fleet continues to add significant amounts of hours. Earlier, last year actually, we achieved 2 million flight hours on the S92, but it's a moving target. We're at about 2.1 right now, and I was going over my notes last night. I decided to do a little bit of math. So to give you a little bit of a reference, and the S92 operates worldwide, of course. As we speak, the hour that we'll spend here will add another 18 to that number, right? That's while I work, while I sleep, while I eat, and occasionally even take a day off at the beach. 18 hours are added to that number on the average for every hour that we stand around or work. So that's very exciting from our point of view. We have challenges with respect to the availability of some parts, and we've been very transparent about that. COVID, along with some of the other attributes, including the war in Europe, has put pressure on the supply chain, not only on materials, but suppliers' ability to react to ordering. And we experienced a spike in the usage of the S92 in particular. So going back 2 to 3 years, there was actually some overcapacity on the S92 fleet, so there was a number of aircraft that were in storage. To our data right now, vast majority of those are back and they're working. So that was one of the things that added to the pressure point that we have here. We're very focused, just to give you another kind of reference point, about 86% of our flight hours are part of the offshore segment. And those aircraft, we actually have about 7 aircraft that, even though it was only introduced in 2004, have over 20,000 hours. And in fact, the high hour aircraft is approaching 28,000. I joke around with my staff, there's some of these aircraft that work more hours in a year than we do, even though everybody's working really hard. So one of the things that we see as these aircraft age out, we see additional exploration, particularly on the offshore, and we see an opportunity for us to an extent, replace the existing S92s that are working hard as they age out, as they get through the process of retirement. Now, one of the things that comes up every once in a while, and this is a little bit of a maybe a little known fact, we continue to build S92s. We delivered an S92 earlier this year to the Korean Coast Guard search and rescue aircraft. We have actually another one to be delivered later this year, also to the Korean Coast Guard. We have another organization in Korea that's taking a third aircraft for search and rescue. And we're working on 3 aircraft for VIPs. So in our factory right now for the S92s, which is located in West Palm Beach, Florida, we have 5 aircraft underway. One of the things that we've sometimes been asked about is where will we build the S92s? It's an interesting, I think everyone knows a little bit about geography. They're curious about where we might do that. We have not decided, to be honest. But we've done the math with respect to the viability of producing new aircraft, and it's clear that we can. We have about, at Sikorsky and Lockheed Martin, about 3 million square feet available to us to be able to do that. And I remind everyone that the S92 currently being built in West Palm Beach, that's the 4th location since 2004 that we've done those assemblies. So it's not particularly paramount. We'll be announcing that when it's finalized, but it doesn't turn out to be a big part of the business case. I mentioned before that we have done this analysis. We validated the market with some external perspectives. One of the things that I want to be clear with is that our sales team is here this week, ready to talk to customers and ready to take orders on the S92. Now, I talked a little bit about the challenges on the support. I would say that majority of my team is focused on the aftermarket, keeping these aircraft flying as often as they have to fly to stay productive for our customers is very, very important. And we continue to work diligently with our supply chain. One of the things, I mentioned before, I've worked at Sikorsky for over 30 years, and what we've experienced in the last 2 to 3 years with challenges in the industry as far as the supply chain is pretty unprecedented. The S92 with a relatively large fleet has for sure been impacted. We've been able to keep our availability numbers at this point at the high 80s. And normally an S92 does very well actually in the mid-90s, right? So we continue to work towards that. We've done a lot collaborating with our customers in order to do the appropriate planning, et cetera, to be able to stay ahead of this. We've put a lot of extra effort also working with our suppliers in order to address their challenges. We have a full spectrum of things that have come up along the way. And we've bolstered our team, and we actually co-located our supply chain team with the rest of our team in Trumbull, Connecticut, almost in an emergency center in order to optimize the communication and be able to move as quickly as possible through that. Our recognition at the end of the day is that, we don't succeed at Sikorsky unless our customers fly. And our agendas are very, very well aligned, and that's what we focus on. We've talked in the past about something that we call the S92 A Plus kit. This is an improvement kit that is under development. We continue to invest in that, and if you stop at our booth, we have some information on that. We have a video that's running and actually a model of the gearbox that is part of that kit. That gearbox, we call that the Phase 4. It's a gearbox that incorporates a lot of the learnings that we've had over the last 20 years or so. And one of the things that I like about working at Sikorsky is even though the S92 is a heavy machine to most of my competitors, at Sikorsky it's really kind of not that heavy, right, when you're talking about 53Ks and things like that. So that enables us to really work in a comfort zone that I think gives us a lot of benefits from a technology perspective. You can see details on that Phase 4 gearbox. We're working on that. We're projecting certification in 2025. We're actually taking position agreements on that and continue to do that. If you step up now, anyone who steps up now is actually waiting until 2026 to get theirs. And new aircraft that we would build would also benefit from that particular set of features. Okay, and a little bit about the S76. So we are building at this moment 3 S76s. 2 of them are search and rescue aircraft that are actually going to the Japanese Coast Guard. One of them is a VIP that's going to a Korean corporate customer. The production of these aircraft has slowed down significantly in the last number of years, but we continue to see a very robust usage of the aircraft. So I talked a lot about the hours achieved on the S92. The S76 actually this year is flying significantly more than it's flown in the last 2 or 3 years, at the fleet level. So we're happy to see that. It helps us with our aftermarket business, and it's an active part of that activity. These aircraft that I mentioned before are being built in our Owego, New York facility. I mentioned we have quite a lot of different options with respect to that. And we continue to extend our serviceability of this aircraft. In fact, one of the announcements that will be made more formally a little bit later, we have a ceremony to celebrate an agreement with PHI where they are becoming an official service center for the 76 and the 92. And we have quite a number of those centers, and we're excited to continue expanding that. It's a good sign that people want to continue to grow that. Okay. All right. So in summary, the future looks bright with respect to Sikorsky's commercial business. I'm very excited to be part of this team, and we see a lot of feedback from our customers, a lot of engagement and interest on this. We continue to take orders on the S92, as I mentioned earlier. We are happy to take questions in a moment here, and I would remind you that we have a series of booth events, and they're listed here throughout the week, and happy to also talk to anyone who wants to talk one-on-one a little bit later. We can make those arrangements. Okay? So I'll pause there, and with that, Paul and I will take any questions.
Hi, Dominic Perry with Flight Global. I was wondering what the lead time was for a new S92, and also whether you are still pitching the S92B, and if so, what's happening with that program?
Okay, so with respect to the lead time, it depends a little bit on configuration, of course, but one of the things that we're working on is making sure that we find the right balance with the supply chain and our ability to do this with confidence. So it ranges between 2 and 3 years, something in that order. And you know, we've made a decision to not build ahead, you know, just based on the dynamics of the industry and so forth. Some people may be willing to take that perspective, but we think for ourselves and our customers this will work out well. And then you asked about the 92B. So the 92B from a couple of years ago was an exploration on making further changes on the S92, including some changes to the airframe that were pretty intrusive, size of windows, things like that. We have actually honestly seen limited interest in that from the marketplace. So what we've done is we've essentially packaged it and put it on the shelf. We've done all that preliminary work. So if at some point it becomes of bigger interest, we'd be able to extend that. But we don't have any plans right now to build S92Bs.
Tony Osborne with Aviation Week. So just to clarify then, so every aircraft that comes off the line from 2025 onwards will essentially be an A plus, S92 that is. And are you still taking orders for 76s at this point? I sort of understand that was sort of a statement that came out maybe last year that you had stopped. What is the situation and what is the vision for S76 going forward?
Okay, so your first question was on the 92?
So on the ICE2 was, is it A plus from 2025 onwards? Will they, every aircraft will be an A plus from 2025 onwards after certification?
Yes. So that is the plan. That's the approach. We do have the flexibility of there could be reasons why customers might want to go with the current phase 3. That's an excellent gearbox, for example. So we may be open to that depending on circumstances. But our assumption right now, and the study that I described earlier, assumes that the A plus will be the configuration for the S92. With respect to the S76, you're right. Last year we announced that we weren't taking any orders. We haven't taken any additional orders, and it's a function of really what we're seeing in the marketplace. Small numbers as far as the interest go don't give us enough scale to really be competitive with that. And we also had a challenge with the fuel system. The original design of the 76 would require additional development. And frankly, we don't see enough of a business case to go do that improvement and some of the things that go with that and still kind of rationalize what would be the expected sales for that. So yeah, at this moment, we're not taking additional S76.
Is the idea to then package that up and put it on the shelf, as you say, with the S92B, put the S76 alongside the S76?
It's a little bit more progressive than that. So, and we're not ready to honestly announce anything, but we are exploring other concepts and the possibility of maybe partnering with somebody and maybe targeting different markets than what historically the S76 has done. So in the background, we are definitely considering some alternatives.
Could one of those alternatives be in partnership in India for S76?
So I'm not ready to get that specific, to be honest with you, but that probably wouldn't be a stretch. Ideas along those lines is what's being explored, and we're quantifying that with specific business cases with potential partners.
Hi, Alon Head from Vertical Magazine. When you first introduced the S92 A Plus, you were targeting initial deliveries this year. Can you talk a bit more about the certification process and why that's been pushed out to 2025?
Sure. I would say it's market-driven, right? So there's no reason why we couldn't have finished that certification earlier. But as you saw, a company like Sikorsky has a lot of different things that it can focus its resources on, and it's a matter of priorities at some point. So we have done a majority of the development. What remains on the A Plus kit is some certification work that, at this point, honestly, from a technical perspective, is low risk. So we've been in the position of being able to throttle that and match that to the need of the marketplace. So we just haven't had a strong enough pull there, and we think that 2025 is a good match for what the expectations are.
Hi, Mark Huber, Aviation International News. If I order an A+, will that kick the life limit beyond 30,000 hours, and do you have any plan to pursue certification beyond 30,000 hours on the airframe?
We do not. 30,000 hours is the certified limit on the aircraft, and the feedback that we get from the customers is that that's well aligned with the expectations and planning that they do. There is such a thing as an aircraft getting, I'll say, too old. And so at this point, we don't have any plans. It could be done technically. It would be a significant investment. But just like the question earlier, we look at every investment in the context of business opportunity. And so our plan currently is to keep that limit.
Jim McKenna with Aerospace Tech Review. So in this centennial year, what does Sikorsky look like in the next 25 years beyond whatever commercial sales you get on the S92 and military work?
Paul, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah, I think, well, first, we are going to talk a little bit about that at 12:30 today, so I don't want to get ahead on some of the new things that we're thinking about. But, you know, as far as we can project out for the next 10 or 15 years at least, we still see, you know, robust sales of the current platforms and derivatives of the current platforms, both domestically and internationally. But we certainly are looking to all that's going on in the world of VTOL today, and are beginning our investments. We have begun our investments in those areas over the last few years, and as I said, you know, we'll talk more about that today.
We have time for one more question. We do have to clear the room. We want to be respectful for the next press briefing. So one more question.
Ken Swartz, Vertical Flight Society. Two questions. One, the Milestone and other lessors basically have most of the S92 inventory as, and I'm wondering, what role do you see the lessors playing in determining the demand and how these aircraft go back to market? It's a little bit different than historically where you were dealing directly with the operators.
Yes, I agree with you. I think what the leasing companies, the service, if you would, that they're providing is kind of an absorption in both directions of the capacity requirement, right? So frankly, they got a little bit ahead of the need some years back. That resulted in some challenges with aircraft being in storage and so forth. Speaking to them currently, it's a good time to be a leasing company, right? They have all of their aircraft out there working, and you know, they feel like they made some good decisions. I think that what I expect is that they will continue to be conservative going forward. The exuberance that we saw around 2014 is not likely to repeat itself because they have this lesson learned about the risks associated with overbuying. But what I see them is being very thoughtful about what their fleets are going to look like. And one kind of cool thing from my point of view is that the best aircraft to replace an S92 is an S92. And so, you know, we're not going to take that for granted, and we continue to work hard to earn those. But I feel like we're well positioned. So as they continue to rationalize and adjust their fleet, I feel like the S92 is well positioned to respond to that.
And just briefly, can you talk about the Canadian Cyclone program? There's recently been some press in Canada regarding the fly-by-wire, but I'm wondering, have you delivered all the aircraft to Canada, and what's the fix on the fly-by-wire?
Yeah, so we have two aircraft that were original test aircraft. These are the first aircraft built that are going through sort of their refurbishment and rebuild to deliver to Canada later this year. So there are two aircraft left. And, you know, we have come to an agreement with Canada on proposed change to the software for the fly-by-wire system that they are very pleased with. You know, this addresses things that were not in their original requirements. So we came to them and said that, you know, we could do the following items and improve the system, and they're very happy with that. And so we're moving out.
So thank you. This wraps up our 2023 State of Sikorsky.